You don't want to give me a handheld mic. I'm Cuban, and for those of you that aren't familiar with Cubans, they are the Hispanic version of Italians. I speak with my hands. I was working here at some point. I think I was the assistant director here. I know what you're thinking. I was the assistant director, and I'm an associate pastor, always the bridesmaid, you know. And I was on stage, and I threw the mic. It landed over there somewhere. Sound people were not happy with me that day. So yeah, they tape it to my face where it's secure. So we've kind of been cordoned off into separate things, or you have. I've been only here today. People at my church, they're so needy. They want their pastor to be present there. And I love my church, I truly do. And for those of you that are Spokane Valley people, when you left on this Sabbath, the median age of my church rose like somebody put helium in it. But we love them. It's nice to see you all. So yeah, we're gonna do a quick little icebreaker. We're gonna do probably 2 things in about 3 minutes. So I'm gonna ask you to stand up in a second. No, don't stand up yet, you're okay. But you have a good spirit in you. I gotta get a timer out, because I have no concept of time myself, which is exactly what the organizers wanted to hear when they asked me to speak. Okay, I'm gonna set this for 3 minutes. I want you to now stand up. This is the time. Yes, you've been waiting for this moment. Okay, find somebody who you maybe don't know too well, not genetically related to you, and does not attend your church and sit within 10 feet of you. All right? Find somebody, tell them your name, where you're from if you haven't done that, and then tell them your favorite place on earth. If you could disappear from this place right now and reappear in another spot, where would that be? Okay? So, I'm starting the timer. Go find another person. Answer that question. I know some of you may be just thinking a place that has a mattress that's thicker than 3 inches.
My niece and nephew, they're with us. Yes, exactly. They're fostering right now. So my elder nephew right there, he's actually staying with my younger brother. Because all 3 of my siblings, there's some bad business with their mom and dad. Okay. So we're taking care of them now.
Okay, you've got about 30 more seconds, give or take.
And no, his buddy. Thank you so much. What's your name, kid? This is my nephew, Matthew.
Okay, now, I hope you all have found somebody who gained some perspective on them. Don't sit down yet. I don't want you to be at peace just yet. So, I want you to find one more person. Just one more, I promise, this is it. One more person, I want you to tell them name, same thing, all that sort of stuff. But this time I want you to tell your favorite and your least favorite sound. What sound do you love? The sound of the toaster as it rises for me. Okay, you got about 30 seconds.
You can sit with your friends? You can sit with him if you want.
Okay, about 20 seconds.
Least favorite sound?
The sound of an alligator.
I said, this guy's snoring. Oh, man.
Favorite sound?
This guy's chewing.
About
Favorite
10
sound?
seconds.
Any kind of music almost.
My favorite sound is the sound of a video game victory.
He never gets it, so yeah.
I always get it.
Where's that button, bro?
Okay.
What? Loser. Loser.
Alrighty.
Right there. You should know what's You know.
I hope that was a communal experience for you. You got to know somebody you don't know from a different section of our little valley area. I hope you were blessed by that. You got a chance to talk, all those sorts of things. Now, it is time for the truly important thing, and that is to hear my voice. Don't laugh. It's true. So, I enjoy telling stories, and Annie called me a few weeks back to ask if I would tell a story on this evening. And she said words that offend deeply my heart. She said, "Could you keep it short?" I didn't give her the patent answer, which is that asking a pastor not to talk for a long time is like asking an Adventist not to make a small haystack. You know, you gotta make it big. You gotta build up. But I'm gonna do my best. So, when I was younger than now, though to some of you that may not seem possible, I did not want to be a pastor. I had worked for the church for a while, and I'd done a few things with youth and things. I've worked with youth since I was a youth. Had no interest in being a pastor. Instead, I wanted to be a wildlife biologist. That was my goal since I was a small child. I knew that I wanted to work with wildlife, with something with spirit and vigor in it, wildlife. Which, being a pastor, I find that I have been exposed to a lot of wildlife. By the way, I apologize for the people trying to film. I am a moving target. The people at my church trying to film me have to use a very wide angle. I like to get my steps in. The conference demands that I get a certain amount of steps in per day so I don't die or something. Gotta get them in. So throughout some experience I had throughout my life, I had met people at Yellowstone National Park. It's a very small place. You've probably never heard of it. Yellowstone, it's about a 10-hour drive from here. It's a beautiful place. And these people were some of the world's leading experts in a particular animal. It was introduced in 1995 back into the park. It's the wolf. They have bison and elk and all sorts of things that have existed throughout time there, but wolves had not been there for a while. And wanting to work with animals and being a wildlife biologist, I had hoped to gain access to some of these leading experts, these genius biologists who knew everything there was to know about wolves and all those sorts of things. So I finished my first summer here at Camp Myviden. I worked here for 7 years, or 7 seasons. It felt like 7 years at times. 7 seasons. I worked in the kitchen at first. Fear not, things have been sterilized since then. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I really didn't want to go right to college afterwards, but I felt like that was kind of a coming. And as soon as my contract ended here, I got a call from a friend of mine. His name is Doug, and his last name's not important. You don't know him. He's not Adventist. And he runs a little group of cabins that exist in a small town called Silvergate, Montana. Now, Silvergate, Montana has a population of about this section of the bleachers. All of you are probably a big day in Silvergate. It's mostly full of cabins that people can rent out. He called me and he said, hey, I need somebody to clean cabins for me during the day and to basically take care of some stuff while they're there. He said, here's the deal, though. During the mornings and evenings, it offers a spotting for the Wolf Project. Now, the Yellowstone Wolf Project, that's a big deal for people who really love wildlife and really want to get in on the business. And I jumped at the opportunity. Sure, I was going to have to scrub toilets here and there. That was no big deal, because I was going to get to spend the early mornings and the late afternoons out seeing wolves. During the middle of the day, I could clean the cabins, and the wolves were sleeping then anyway. It was going to be no big deal. So I went out, and I lived in a very small room as part of a huge cabin out there, and I bumped up the population and dropped the median age by about half. While I was there, I started to get to know some of the animals. You get to know them as day after day. You sit in the exact same spot. I'd wake up at about 4:45 each morning. I'd get my big high-powered spotting scope, and I'd put it in my car, and we'd drive out, and I'd sit in the same spot, and I'd watch the wolves, and I had a little radio, so I could radio in the biologists. If I had something interesting, they could come in, they could take notes or do whatever it is biologists do. Odd that I worked there for a while, and I'd have no idea what they were doing. While I was there, getting to know some of these animals, there were a small pack of them, 3 animals. And we didn't name them because they were wild animals. They all got a particular number. Sometimes they would be described by how they looked. Big Black was one because he was large and dark in color. We weren't very original. So, the 3 animals I'm going to talk about, they're called 754, 755, I know they're close together and things may happen here that you're going to get confused, but I'm going to help you. And then 06. 06 is a female, and the other 2 were brothers. They had come into the park out of Montana. They were looking for a girlfriend, and they came into the park. They were looking around. They found this particular female. She was smarter than any other animal people had seen. She was able to take down elk all by herself, an animal well beyond 2 to 3 times her size. She was intelligent. She could avoid getting taken down by other wolf packs in the area that were causing problems because they don't like it when other wolves start invading their area. So they found her. Now, 754 was a huge wolf. Big. They run around 130 pounds. He was probably 160. When he curled up into a ball to go take a nap, he looked like a boulder, a big rock just sitting there. He was huge. The problem was he appeared to be very lazy. And he didn't seem to know how to do the things you would expect a wolf to do. Like he did not understand the concept of hunting. He would often scare away the animals the other wolves were trying to chase before they got there. He was kind of a buffoonish animal, not what you're looking for when you're thinking of the big alpha wolf. His brother was significantly smaller, about the same size as 06, the female. But he seemed to have an assertive streak about him. So over time, you get to know them, you get to know their behaviors and things, and at a certain point in time, I noticed something about 754, the big, less intelligent male. He was walking really weird. This leg here was this is not a leg on me, but on a wolf it is. It seemed to be causing him a lot of problems. He couldn't put much weight on it. He really was having a hard time. Now, for an animal who makes his living by running and hunting and all those sorts of things, it's really hard to survive if you have this limp. A limp, even a small sprain or something, can sometimes be fatal to animals like wolves. It was a few years down, or as a few years down the line, and so there were a few pups that had been born to the pack. There were more than 3. There were probably about 8 animals now, a pretty good size. But his limp it kept getting worse and worse. I saw him struggling just to walk from one end of the valley to the other. You could see him. He eventually developed his limp so badly that out in the sagebrush flats, when you're looking out across the valley, you could see him with the naked eye because his limp was so pronounced he would hop when his leg was about to touch the ground. So you would see him, boom, 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 just hopping. Now, this causes a big problem because the rest of the pack is needing to move from one part of the territory to the other. They're probably inspecting, keeping other wolves out. They're looking for food, all these sorts of things. And he just couldn't keep up. He would start out towards the beginning of the line when the group was kind of together, and you would watch as gradually he would fall further and further and further behind. Now, we were really worried about him. We were afraid he wasn't going to get enough food. He was going to really suffer. He was going to have a lot of problems. And it's hard being a wolf. I've seen one get kicked by an elk. It flew about 3 feet, and it got back up to keep chasing. They take licks just trying to get food. And his limp just kept him back so much. The fortunate thing, though, is that 754 had a brother. His brother was in charge of the pack. He was the leader. And there was another young male that had kind of shown himself to be kind of a big male with a lot of initiative, so he kind of made his way up in the ranks of the pack. He did the strangest thing. While moving the pack through the valley, this is up in the northeastern corner in a place called Lamar Valley, while chugging along, his brother, when he would fall too far behind, would periodically be looking backwards, and he would stop, and he would wait for his brother to catch up. His brother was severely wounded. Nobody knew, I still don't know to this day what happened to his arm or the extent of his injuries, but no matter how far he fell behind or how bad his limp was, some days it was worse than others for him, his brother would always be checking on him. And one of these pups would always be checking on him. They would be moving through the valley, and they would stop. And he would catch up. And they would let him catch his breath because you could see it was really taking its toll on him. He was panting, and in the summertime he had black fur, gets really hot, absorbing all that heat. They would wait for a couple of minutes. He would stop the pack, wait a few minutes, and then move on. And when his brother fell behind again, he'd stop, he'd wait, you'd see him lick his face, big tail wagging up in the air, so happy that his brother's there. Just to check on him, just to make sure he was good. 754 did not have any problems with food. And I'll tell you why. He couldn't hunt anymore, but his brother always ensured that he could get a spot in wherever there was meat. 754 became the pack's babysitter. Generation after generation of pups were born, and they would be watched over by big ol' 754. This big burly wolf the size of a boulder who had this bad limp. He still found his way into being useful and helpful. Sure, he wasn't a hunter. He was never a hunter. He and his brother, this is a sidebar. The first time 06 was going to have puppies, we were really worried because the two of them could not hunt. They just couldn't. They gained the nickname Dumb and Dumber. They just couldn't figure out that you have to chase the elk. They could not grasp all the complexities of being able to get from point A to point B. She was the one taking care of everything, the whole pack. And we were worried when she went into the den to take care of her babies that she was going to have a lot of problems with food because the idiots were going to be in charge. Again, I'm very glad for my wife because I would have a similar issue. If she was not around, I would be emaciated, gaunt. Anyway, his brother saw that he was weak, saw where he was injured, and he helped him. 754, by the time he passed away, he didn't die because of his injuries. He didn't die because he didn't get enough food or because he couldn't keep up. His brother always looked out for him. When we're talking about authentic faith, authenticity means a certain thing is going to happen for people. If it means we are trying to strive for an authentic faith, it means that we are going to be exposing things that leave us vulnerable. Belly up, with all the yuck and the muck of your life exposed. Because that's what authenticity does. It means being open and honest, not just about the victories, but about the failures and the defeats. And when we share those parts of ourselves, I'm sure you've talked with somebody and you've shared a part of yourself that you typically don't like people to know about. One of the uglier sides, one of the sadder sides of what it means to be you. And there is a moment after you tell them when you're thinking, I'm all alone. There's no way this person can accept me after knowing this. There's no way they will still want to be a part of being in a relationship with me. It leaves you feeling totally separated, out there, alone. It's so important that when we encourage others to be authentic, we join them in that journey. And that when the yuck and the muck of life come up, that we walk with them. Because being authentic means that we fully expect to see our brothers and sisters in our churches, in our jobs, in our families, to limp. Because life is hard. I'm going to say that again. Life is hard sometimes. It beats us up. And it can leave us feeling like we're all by ourselves, limping there at the back of the pack. Isn't it so wonderful to know that we can be part of a community that Jesus founded, a church that builds on itself, the belief that Jesus sees us with all the nonsense, all the darkness, all the sadness, all the brokenness, the failures, the victories, everything, and that he chooses to stick by your side all the same. Jesus encourages us to love people. If you're a part of my church, you've heard this a lot. That he encourages us to love people, but not just to love them the way he loves. And that means a radical kind of love, a kind of love that's willing to say, we got someplace to go, but I'm not leaving you behind. Our world is so willing to leave people behind. Wouldn't it be great that people can enter into a church that says you're never going to be alone? That they enter into a community that says they're never going to be left behind. That even when you're limping, you have somebody to back you up. I hope you remember this wolf. He was a great animal. And that his brother saw him struggling and walked with him all the same. That's what Jesus wants for us, because he did that for us. He walks with us through everything. Here's why, and this is what I want to leave you with. Jesus actually loves you. He loves you, me, everybody. He cares about us, and he will walk with you through anything. because his love is enough to cover every mistake, every broken piece of who you are. And he loves you. The real question is, do we believe it? Let's pray. Jesus, thank you that you love us, that you care about us. Help us to open our eyes to the people that are hurting around us and to walk with them through the struggles of this life. Thank you, Jesus, that we have a space where we can just take a breath, this fresh mountain air, and get to know each other a little better. Help us to know that you love us and to live like we know it. Amen.